The big squeeze. A few days after the Biggie shooting Shuge's boys, led by Sergeant Crooked Ass Reynolds, pulled my nephew Baby Lane over and said, "You motherfuckers done killed Biggie too cause they didn't pay you the money for Tupac." Reynolds had part of the story right. We hadn't been paid yet, but he was completely wrong about us killing Biggie. That was some bullshit. Why would Southside kill Biggie? We used to hang, smoke, and break bread with the nigga. The crooked cops from Compton, Shuge's boys, were the ones that started the rumors and put the idea in the heads of the police higher-ups downtown that Southside was responsible for killing Biggie to distract and deflect the heat up off of their asses because they know their side did that shit. They were cops, but they were trying to be bloods at the same time, moonlighting as part of Shuge's hit squad. 133. They didn't know what side of the fence they wanted to be on, so the dirty motherfuckers were playing both. It was a wickedly wise move on their part too. You motherfuckers done killed Biggie too, because they didn't pay you the money for Tupac was some bullshit. Make it look like it was me on both of them. If I was getting pressure, we gotta get this off of us. Let's put it all in Kev. I could only imagine the pressure Shuge and Puffy were getting. It made sense. With all of the attention on me, they wouldn't be looking at Puffy or Shuge. They were like, about a month after Biggie's killing, the police raided my house and impounded my SS Impala and alleged that it was the car used in the Biggie murder. There were reports that the vehicle used in the Biggie shooting was a dark-colored Impala, and I did have a dark-colored Impala, but I didn't even drive the thing. Every week when I would receive a shipment of kilos, I would rent another vehicle to keep the feds off of me. The night Biggie got killed, I was in a rental car. My Impala sat in my backyard. They did all kinds of forensic tests on my Impala, and it all came back clean. About 3 weeks later, the FBI raided a whole bunch of our houses and took all of our guns. Sergeant Reynolds, punk ass, came to my house with the FBI and told my wife, "You know you can get a 134, $250,000 reward for information," leading to Kef D's arrest. Before he took off, he said, "Tell Kef D he can turn himself into me, nigga, so you can blow my head off." I would never turn myself into that punk motherfucker. My problems with Sergeant Reynolds went all the way back to when I got out of Tracy in 1990s. My brother had been gunned down in the streets by some bloods. January 23rd, 1990 is when we buried him. That night after the funeral, we went to a spot called the Red Onion to celebrate his life. Sergeant Reynolds was in the club drinking. He was a cop, so he didn't have any business in there dealing with gangsters. Reynolds had a few broads that he was buying drinks for, then the broad that he had eyes for ended up leaving the club with Kef D that night. I could sense the jealousy he had in his heart from that night on. It just so happened that he ended up being a player on Shuge's team. Shuge bought Reynolds a red Acura. Legend, in fact. Shuge bought all the police he had working for him red cars. I had zero trust in dealing with Compton police in general, and definitely not Sergeant Reynolds. VVV. During this chaotic period, on top of everything else that was going on, my wife's father died. So we went to bury him, for family still had 135, their 40 acres and a mule. They had a church on their property and everything. While the funeral was going on, my Colombian boy called me. "I have the chickens, kilos ready." I arranged to have one of my lieutenants, an older gentleman named Cy, to go pick them up. I stayed in Texas for a few more days. Then on Tuesday morning, the Colombian called again. "Where you at?" "I'm still out here in Texas. Come on home and take care of your business." "All right, I'll be there tomorrow." I flew home the next day and made plans to dispatch the kilos. I was going to send my boy Feet, who was positioned in another city, 60 keys, and my brother 75 keys. Everybody had the same instructions to let me know when the kilos arrived at their destination. I didn't have anyone reliable to deliver Feet's kilos, so he suggested my uncle will take them. Cool. I gave Feet's uncle the 60 kilos to transport, but the nigga didn't leave immediately with them. Everybody else called back by Thursday telling me that they had landed. Kept calling Feet, but he didn't answer. I had my boy Bubble up pass by Feet's house, and he called to tell me, "Man, that mobile home is still in the driveway. We had removed the inside of the mobile home, taped the kilos inside." "You bullshitting, I swear." Bubble UP responded. The next evening about 6 p.m. Feet called me, "Man, they done pulled over the mobile home." "Where, y'all at?" "Central Ave, and the freeway." I jumped in my ride and drove by Central as I was about to exit the freeway, I could see that some Compton PD and DEAA agents had the mobile home pulled over to the side of the road. Come to find out, it was Compton Police Sergeant Reynolds who had pulled over the kilos. Money wasn't an issue for me before they busted my 60 kilos. But the police were weakening us by hitting us from all sides. We were fighting against a double-edged sword. The battle with the street niggas was on, and expected. But more devastating was the dirty cops we were up against. The police were taking our shit, so Puffy needed to bring the money. We were still waiting to get our paycheck. That's when I sent Puffy a few messages through people that could get to the nigga, send us $10,000, we need guns. The police are crippling us by taking our shit. The big squeeze was on. Since the drug bust of the mobile home was on all of the news channels, the Colombian plug called me later that night. "Was that us in Compton?" Nah, we good." The Colombian must have had a tingly feeling, because at 7 a.m. the next morning, I heard someone knocking on my back door. I looked out the peephole, and it was him. I opened the door, and before I could say anything, he asked, "That was us, huh?" "Yeah, dog." "Damn, what are we gonna do?" We sat there and came up with a plan. We added up all the figures, how much we lost and how much we would need to make to get it back. We figured we would need to sell 126 kilos so that neither of us would have to pay anything out of our pockets. "I'm going to get us 126 more, he said. 2 weeks went by, and the Colombian called me, "Man, I have the kilos." I went and met him for breakfast, picked up the El Camino, and called my boy C-Ray. "Man, it's going down today. Figure out a spot where we can make this happen." C-Ray had a client named George and his wife out here from Cleveland. "We can go to my cousin's house out in Corona." C-Ray suggested. "Cool, set it up." I had 2 older dudes drive the El Camino with the kilos. My cousin and this guy named Taco were in the van with the out-of-towners. We intentionally got on the freeway about 5 o'clock during the height of commuter traffic hours. When we got by Cerritos, a white man pulled up. 138. and started waving at us with this big old smile on his face. The cocksucker's dick was so hard because he wanted us so bad that he blew their little operation, otherwise they would have had us. C-Ray and I looked at the white man, then looked at each other, and at about the same time said, "That's 5-0. We pulled off the freeway and waited about 5 minutes. We were in a hot brand new Z28 SS Camaro. We got back on the freeway to catch up with the others. By that time there were about 5 more cars on the freeway, just like the one the Fed was in that pulled up beside us. I couldn't lose the load because I had just lost the 60 kilos 2 weeks prior. Not being overly dramatic, but my life and my family's life was on the line. I had to do some fast thinking. We pulled up on the side of the El Camino and yelled out the window, "Don't turn your head, don't turn your head, go home, go home, go home." The driver of the El Camino got our message, pulled off the freeway, and went back home. I asked C-Ray, "Where's a spot in Riverside we could meet?" "That little Comfort Inn on La Sierra." We pulled up beside the van and yelled out the window to them, "Y'all go to the Comfort Inn on La Sierra. Just wait there until further notice." C-Ray and I sped off. A mile or so down the road, I pulled off to the side of the freeway, raised the hood like our car, having mechanical difficulties, and we saw about 20 cars and 3 or 4 motorcycles following the van, ready to take our asses down. They would not let that van out of their sight. I had to make sure the 126 kilos was safe, so we jumped off the freeway and went on the other side to chase down the El Camino. When we caught up with them, I told them to park the El Camino by my brother's house. C-Ray and I went on to one of our safe houses. I left the people in the van waiting for about 4 hours. As long as the kilos were safe, I was cool with that. The dudes from out of town called. "What's going on?" "Man, there's a change of plans. It ain't going down today. Y'all come on back." "Where?" "Y'all at the safe house." A few hours later, they showed up at the safe house. When they arrived, I said, "Man, we had to change plans. We're going to try it another day." C-Ray convinced me that the police on the freeway following us was from a task force that was assigned to follow ballers home from the casinos. First told George and his wife to get a room and call me. Once they got settled. A few hours later, George paged me, and when I looked at the number, I recognized that it was from the Holiday Inn on Vermont Ave. And I knew the number because I used to rent rooms there a lot myself. Instead of calling them back, we drove up there. When we hit the parking lot, I saw the same undercover Fed cars that were following us on the freeway, parked right next to the van. I couldn't understand that for anything in the world. I didn't say anything. I just looked at C-Ray, and he had a deer in the headlights. "Look," I asked him, "you been up here for the last 2 weeks, entertaining these niggas, taking them to the mall, clubs, eating. You done took this nigga everywhere. The Feds didn't run in the room on you." "Nah, dog." When we hit the parking lot, I saw the same undercover Fed cars that were following us on the freeway, parked right next to the van. I just looked at him like, "Nigga, I know what's up." They had apparently got some trouble with the police, but they didn't tell me. If I had gone into that hotel room, I would have probably been walking into a room with the 2-way door and mirror, and they would have run in on us. I know they gotten into some trouble and started talking to the police. That's why the white dude's dick was so hard on the freeway. We had a safe house out of town, so with all the heat that was on us, I flew out immediately and stayed there for 3 to 4 weeks. I was catching all that heat behind a jealous-ass, punk-ass cop, Sergeant Reynolds. The Feds were on me so hard, I told the Colombian that I needed to take a break for 4 to 5 months. I gave him back the 126 kilos he had given me. I had $700,000 saved up, plus the profit I was going to make off of the other 240 kilos I had out on streets. The money from the 240 kilos came back, and it took me another 2 to 3 weeks to give him the $700,000, all in $100 bills. Then I took a break for 5 months. In 2007, I ran into Puffy's former stylist and Howard University roommate D-Mac. He told me that Puffy's homeboy Zip got the money from Puffy that he was supposed to pay us. Allegedly, that's how Zip bought the New York nightclub he owned and started his clothing line. We'll never know, since dead men tell no tales. What I do know is we never got a dime from the nigga Puffy. Fucking around with him turned me into adversaries with Shuge and the crooked cops he had on his team, which cost me severely financially.